Hi folks, how the devil are you? I hope you've all had a wonderful week. For those who are coming back and listening on to that wonderful thing called replay, enjoy the show. My name is Mahmood, so I hope you've all had a great week. I hope things have gone really well. Hope it's been absolutely tip-top. So let's get on with the show. What are we going to be talking about this week? Well, this week's show is entitled Business Grief. Now, it sounds very dramatic, doesn't it? Business grief here. But fundamentally, I want to talk about situations, whether caused by conscious choice, whether caused by calamity, whether caused by a conscious decision because of calamity, where we as business owners and the people connected to our business deal with change. Now, I've called it business grief here because I'm a great believer that when you run your business here, we look at how you can make things better, how you can improve on that, how you can do more with less, and all that sort of situation that might present itself here. We always look for parallels, we always look for examples in other activities so we can draw lessons here. So it's not uncommon that we as business owners would look to the world of sports, we look at perhaps elite athletes, we look at how they perform here, and we try and learn lessons from them, whether it's in the area of benchmarking, process improvement, mindset, the gap between the ears, always that very difficult battle, the most difficult battle you have in human terms, what goes on between the ears. So we draw parallels and lessons from that. And for me, my motivation for today's conversation, it's a model that I've come across a few years ago here. I think it's very applicable, and it's called the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. Sounds very dramatic. I'll give you a bit of an overview about Kubler-Ross, what it is. This is not an academic lecture. This is about something that's practical, and it's about when you deal with change, whatever that reason for change actually is, part of the battle is actually recognizing where you as a business owner are actually within that cycle. So if you can understand your situation, it's much easier to actually deal with the situation as it presents itself. Now, for those of you just coming on, watching the replay or just coming live, there is a comment facility, if I can speak properly, that is. By all means, as we're going through the broadcast, if there are things you want to introduce, comment on, feel free to. What I'm going to be running through for the next, say, 25 minutes, half an hour, is to give you an overview of this grief cycle, the analogies to apply it into your own business there as well, so you can actually be the best business you can be, to recognise where you are in that cycle, give you some practical tips as well, by the way, for how you cope where you are in that cycle. And there's a few sort of things I need to emphasise here. As we go through this model, everybody sees the world through their own spectacles, through their own vision here. So do not judge your business yourself by how others are performing. You can only judge it by reference to yourself there as well. Some of us may be at different stages of the cycle. Some of us may have lots of resources to access into. Some of us may be a certain stage down the cycle. Some of us might be falling back. So remember, your own business performance is referenced by you. Do not judge yourself by other people there as well, possibly because they might be exaggerating. We don't actually know what's going on behind the scenes. So let me introduce you to this wonderful thing. I think it's a great delight, and there are lessons that we can learn from this as well. The usual thing, if you like the show, which hopefully you will do, if you think others in your circle can benefit, I'm not going to be embarrassed if you want to share it. There's lots of links at the bottom. Share it around. Any comments and questions we can progress with. Now, you're probably at home thinking, okay, Mimo, just get on with the show. That's enough. So let's do a little bit of wizardry. Let's share the screen. And here's what we're talking about. So this whole thing about dealing with business grief, now it doesn't have to be a dramatic, but it's where you and your business are experiencing change. Again, it could be because of circumstances outside of your control. Your business model suddenly takes a slap in the face with a wet fish. It could be you've consciously decided that you are at some point in your business cycle that you feel the need to diversify, to change. You could be what I call an offline business that's decided for whatever reason that you need to move more online. You might be an online business that's suffered for whatever reason and you want to diversify that income stream. You may wish to upscale. You may wish to take on additional personnel in your business. You may implementing new systems, whether they're IT systems, whether they're new ways of working, getting to grips with your numbers, for example. Notice a little bit of a plug there. Whatever change we go through, human beings, which is fundamentally what makes up business, experience different reactions to that. And here's the first thing that the Kubler cycle deals with. The origin of this model, by the way, was an eminent psychiatrist. It's a late 60s model here. And even though it was predominantly developed to deal with personal grief here and recognizing the changes that people go through when they're dealing with the grieving process, the model has then been adapted and applied in lots of different situations, including the world of business here. So it gives us those insights, gives us those clues, it gives us ways that we can actually deal with this situation, for the best of it. The first stage of any sort of major changes is the denial phase. So we don't think it's actually going on. We actually try and dismiss it out, and it's going to engender a number of different reactions of sorts. Some of us will be confused by what's going on. Some of it will be literally, if it's a very dramatic situation, it'll be literally like a slap in the face. 1 minute you wake up and your business vision is going that way, and the next thing you know, the rug has been pulled from under your feet here, and you're dealing with a completely different landscape. And all those different emotions are running through us there, and each of us will be at that denial stage. Now, remember what I was saying at the beginning. As I go through effectively the 5 stages that are identified, some of you, it's not a straight line process, not saying, oh, I've done the denial, I'll move on to stage 2. It's going to be a back and forth here. It's not quite a linear relationship. And some of us will be in these stages for a long time. Some of your businesses will be this for a short period of time there. But it's important to recognize that these stages exist and what we can do with that. So we'll try and avoid it. We'll try and avoid the change happening. If you've got staff that are working with you, or you've got a team of freelancers, suppliers, and even yourself as a business owner here, you may just think, no, it doesn't apply to me. It's not happening. Let's just avoid it. Key thing is here at this stage, if you are the entrepreneur, if you are the business owner who's driving your business forward here, communication and transparency is always an excellent way and a recommended way that you deal with this. Now, it doesn't mean massive emails. It means use this, use that, use a number of ways, but you need to communicate and you need to grab things by the scruff as far as you can and actually communicate to people what's going on. Now, what's stage 2, you might be asking yourself? As we're going through this, some of you may recognize these features and facets in yourself, in your own business, so I'll be interested to hear what your views are. Stage 2, a bit of a subliminal message here. That was a purely accidental way to introduce the slide. The next stage is anger, and it manifests itself in people in different ways. Some of us may get frustrated with what's going on behind us, and we all know that when we are working in our business here, anger manifests itself in a number of different ways. Some people get irritable. Obviously me, I'm always a happy, smiley person. My staff might not agree with me, and when I get pressured, I might be more short than I actually am, and I'll be honest with you on that respect. But anger effectively at the situation that presents itself, means that we might get irritable, we get anxious, and as human beings, we manifest that anger in lots of different ways. Some people may get angry in terms of physical manifestation. Some people may get angry and take it out on inanimate objects. Some people may express and vent that frustration, that anger, that anxiety on their colleagues, on the people they work with, their freelancers, their suppliers. In lots of different situations, it occurs. So it's recognized. It's not saying to accept that, by the way, but it's actually recognizing that does actually occur. Effectively, we could go back and forth between these two things. Now, what does that mean in terms of stage 3? Well, stage 3, and the power of magic, we then get the depression. Now, please, and by no means would be recognized as a doctor. I'm not a medical person. I don't have a medical background. I'm very fortunate, if that's the word you want to use, by the way, that my wife comes from a psychiatric background. There's no irony in that particular statement there. So in terms of, I'm not talking about clinical depression, but effectively that denial, that anger, effectively then leads on to depression, which could be literally sadness. It could be feeling that things are outside of your control. The business landscape that's in front of us, what we knew was happening, okay, effectively it reflects itself. Some people internalize that. Some people externalize that. It's that flight, that fear of flight there. Some of us just feel so overwhelmed with what's going on, especially if the changes are dramatic here. It can have a major impact on your business sustainability. And for me, I'm a big believer in business sustainability and business survival itself. So for me, business is whatever you are, whether you are private businesses, whether you're not-for-profit businesses, whether you're social enterprises, whether you're charities, doesn't matter, whether you're public sector organisations, you come together, you do something as a solopreneur, as a large-scale organisation, and as an SME here, you've got a business there. How you do with that money, which is a topic for another day, is a differentiator perhaps, but you're still fundamentally a business here. So it's about recognising that within your team perhaps, that human beings do not, as a general rule, like change. We like things to be constant. We like things to be familiar because we know what to do with them. If I've got a particular type of customer that I'm dealing with, and I've got years of experience of dealing with that particular type of customer, then obviously it's great if all my customers replicate that sort of behaviour. The online world has changed that in the last few years here. So customer behaviour fundamentally stays the same, but the way I deliver my services, the way I communicate with that is a change of pattern there as well. So overwhelm, helplessness, hostility and flight are some of the characteristics that come out there. For me, I'm a big believer in terms of options. What does one do to actually deal with that? How does one cope? Well, communication is an endemic thing here. So how you communicate with your team members, how you communicate with your customers, with your suppliers, and depending what the nature of the change is, by the way, you need to take people on that journey with you. So if you are in a business that's been affected by some degree of things outside of your control, a calamity, a disaster, then you need to make sure you communicate with all the stakeholders in your business. And your stakeholders are those who have an interest in your business. So those are your team members, your suppliers, your customers, let's not forget them. Yourself, you are a stakeholder in your business. You are the owner, the founder, whatever term you want to describe yourself by here. So you need to make sure you communicate with all those different groups, all those different stakeholders there. If you feel that you want to hide under the duvet and you feel that you can't quite cope with it, then obviously you're in that depression stage here. And how do you cope with that? Well, for me, I'm a big believer in sort of planning, trying to identify problems. Okay, and it might be you just set yourself little mini milestones there. So whether it's, for example, going out for a walk, whether it's actually trying to do something that's different on the next day, but recognize that and everyone will be going through a slightly different reaction here. But there is a depression phase. And as we said at the beginning, it could be short-lived, it could be long-lived. Now, I'm very fortunate. I'm just going to take a slight pause there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very fortunate that one of my friends and colleagues and associates, who I had a conversation with about here, who's probably more of an expert in certain dynamics on this one, Joe, who's just popped on. So I'm just going to, Joe, just have a little temporary, let's say here. I'm going to showcase Joe at the end of this, by the way. Joe contributed to some of this presentation. I spoke to her about her experience here. Joe is a wonderful sort of business change person. So I'll flag her up and her details at the end. And again, obviously, I have a great font of knowledge and expertise. Other people in your network do as well. And you need to tap into them as you see fit. So, Joe, good morning to you. You've worked very hard. I'm going to talk to you again at the end. Let's just take that comment out. So what have we got so far? So I love mnemonics, by the way. The mnemonic we're going to summarize at the moment. So far, we've got DAB. Now, DAB is not a music system. It's about the denial we've talked about. We talk about the anger phase. We talk about the bargaining phase here, where we try and perhaps in a business context actually think, well, maybe it doesn't apply to me so much. If you're a team member, one of your staff might be thinking, okay, I know change is a coming. As Bob Dylan might have said, changes are coming. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and modify and bargain things to suit myself. It's a normal human reaction that in an organisation, people will first of all deal with themselves initially. It's quite normal, quite natural. As an organisation, we want everyone to sing on the same hymn sheet, so to speak. So that alignment may take some time. And one thing I would certainly suggest at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, remember, behaviour is what we're really interested in, not opinion. Those two things are completely disconnected. So when we've got somebody in that stage, we need to make sure we've got support systems to help them. We've got to take employees on the journey with us. We've got to take suppliers on the journey with us as well. Customers, don't ignore them. In any degree of calamity and change, one big mistake that I've seen companies make is they wait until the end of the change process and then say to customers, oh, by the way, we're now doing things differently here. You've got to take people on the journey with you. You've got to have what they call buy-in. So I thank you, my American cousins there. If you don't have buy-in, then effectively you're going to have a very difficult business on your hands. What are we talking about next, though? So we've got 3 key stages here. Those who are just coming back on replay and catch up, we've been talking about dealing with business grief. And business grief doesn't necessarily mean it's fatal, by the way. It's saying when you've got a change in your business, whatever the reason for that change is, it could be a technology change, it could be a business environment landscape change, it could be introducing new personnel into your business, it could be a different way of working, more online, less offline. Any change that goes on to how you're normally doing things here, manifests itself into what I call a grief cycle. I'm sure Elizabeth, when she wrote this treatise back in the late 60s, didn't think that the world of business and the world of pretty much everything else would be taking her model and applying it to their own situation. So unfortunately, she doesn't get any royalties from this, which is unfortunate, but good for us. Stage 4 is the bargaining. So again, we're coming in, if you looked at it in terms of like a diagram, I'm going to use my finger, not being rude, you've got an up and down roller coaster here, and we're coming towards what we might call the top of the curve. So we're trying to find meaning, we're trying to rationalize things here. And when I use the we, I'm not using we in the royal sense of the word, it's we as the business and the individuals that connect with that business. Suppliers, customers, some of your own team members, yourself. You could actually argue also people who might be connected with you, so your friends and your family. It's very easy to get to a situation where you think as a business owner that only it's me who is affected. Your behavior, how you are, reflects and ripples out to those around you. So we reach out, and communication, again, I'm coming back to that communication. Even though I'm predominantly a business numbers and business advisor person, the business is run fundamentally by individuals and by human beings. So we need to understand and we need to blend 2 things. One is to connect to the human part of the business and do what we can to get the best out of that situation. And number 2 is to blend that in with what I call systems and disciplines and all the rest of it. So effectively reaching out, and reaching out could be to people in your own network. Reaching out could be to experts who might help you on that journey. So experts like myself, experts like Joe, experts, whoever they are, experts are, you need to reach out. No one person has that line, and I know it's a bit of a cliche here. Do not bottle things up. Do not try and solve everything by yourself. It's going to become literally impossible. And telling other people about how you're acting, how you're responding to that is part of that cathartic, part of that healing process. Now, if you're thinking this is a show of opera, anyone who's just joining on the replay, then I'm sorry to disappoint you. Opera's much more attractive than I am. She's got much more reach there as well. But again, business is about the human dynamic as well as the delivery of the service there as well. Do not look at these things in isolation. Now, before we come to number 5, and I've got a couple of little delights for you here, because I'm going to introduce something which summarizes what we've been talking about, but actually I've got a personal reference point here that some of you will enjoy. I'm just going to pause there for a second because I'm going to share a comment from Joe. Now, I think that's very well put by Joe. Joe hopefully won't be embarrassed by me saying to her, she has a lot of knowledge and expertise on this subject here. So what she's saying here, fantastic points about how he ripples out, how this affects around us. Correct. And Joe, one of her skill sets are, apart from understanding the world of business, being creative, generating ideas and all the rest of it, understands that human element here has to be blended with that hard business element. Joe, thank you very much for that comment. Let's take you off there. Now, stage 5, bit of a drum roll here. So we've got 4 stages so far. As we've got dabber. So we've got the denial phase, we've got the anger phase, and it manifests itself in different ways. The bargaining phase, trying to find some meaning, reaching out, and we've had the depression phase as well. Now, here's the last stage of the cycle, and it's the acceptance. Now, the acceptance doesn't mean, oh, I'm happy, I'm going to be skipping. I think it's quite unnatural when we come across individuals. I see them sometimes in social media that, are doing the chest beating. Look at me, I've actually upsized my business. It's so wonderful. I can take money off you, I can create opportunities, and overnight, you have a success on your hands. If anyone tells you that you can achieve success overnight, they are either sadly deluded or they're actually lying to you here. All successful businesses that I know, and we measure success in different ways. I'm not talking about financial success. Whatever your measure of success is, all successful people that I know have actually put that sweat in to get the equity. All the clients that I know, and some of them are actually on this, World Max, I'm just going to give him a flag up in a moment. Very hard working guy, Richard. He's gone from working his socks off in his business. He's got to a stage of achieving it, and that hasn't happened overnight. It's effort, it's risk, it's application, it's being good at what you do, turning up, being consistent. So again, whatever happens is when you look at options, when you look at plans, you've got to have some context or realism in there as well. Realistic to your own circumstances, certainly, but do not expect any change to happen dramatically overnight. Those who become very ambitious in what they're trying to achieve, to say, right, I've got to pivot, I've got to change, I'm going to rush, I'm going to get over anxious here, disaster is ahead of you. Deep breath, bit of diaphragmatic breathing, plan. I would certainly say that's critical. I think whatever your stage of business cycle is, you've got to have a plan there. Planning is critical in my mind to actually achieving success. And I'm not talking about a plan, by the way. I'm talking about a mindset of planning. And it's a topic we're going to expand on in future broadcasts, assuming that Ofcom don't yank me off the air. So we look at options, and life always has options. Your business always has options. We look at the plans. We produce those plans in the right way. I love the idea of a business plan framework, which sets where we want to get to, works backwards to how we're going to achieve that. And again, that's a topic I'm going to expand on in future sessions, and we move on. How do we summarize all this, everyone? I'm just going to embarrass Richard here. Richard here, World Max. Again, on the future shows, by the way, I think it's great that we not only showcase, obviously, what I think is a wonderful thing that me and my team are doing, but I want to showcase some of our clients here and some of the businesses that I come across that aren't actually our clients here, just to demonstrate to you about what it takes to actually run an organisation. Now, Richard from World Max, I've known him for some time here, works very hard, and in future shows, Richard, we're going to have you on here and you can showcase yourself and probably share your own business story with our audience. So that's it. Let's, Richard, I don't want to embarrass Richard too much. Let's take him off here. So, options, plans, stress testing, and what you'll find is here, a nice little neat summary at the end. And here we go. I can't take any credit for the graphics, by the way. I said, effectively, with a bit of software, a bit of design here, I've cobbled these together. If there are any designers in the audience here, obviously, I do apologise to you. I take my hat off in contrition, but it's just trying to illustrate the points here. Now, if you notice the cycle, one thing the diagram does not show us is that this cycle isn't always we go round and round like so. It could be you get to the acceptance stage and you slip back into the anger stage. It could be you're in the denial stage and you jump ahead into the bargaining acceptance stage and you've not had time to grieve itself. So don't beat yourself up. Don't be hard on yourself in your business. And remember, stages can be very short-lived. Stages can be very long-lived. You can get to a stage where you accept that you've got to do new things. You've got to accept working online is the way your business is going. You've got a business plan put together. You've obviously put the numbers together. You've done your cash flows. You've done your KPIs. You've done whatever you need to do in your business creation, the idea here. You can get to the acceptance, carry on, and suddenly, just like with any grieving process, you have a flashback and you drag back down into that anger, that depression phase. Hopefully that depression anger phase is very short-lived, and you make sure you're moving back towards the acceptance stage there as well. All of us have those moments in our life, in our business life here, where we're feeling very optimistic, and then suddenly a flashback, something completely untoward. It may be a customer who upsets us. It might be something we're doing. We've done all the time. We've done it brilliantly, and one day something goes wrong, and we've not done it to the best of our ability. It happens. Make sure you've got a support system around you. Make sure you look after your health, your well-being. Make sure you've got a plan. And when you set a plan, be realistic. Don't suddenly say, I've moved my business to this direction, and now I'm going to achieve all that success in the next 4 weeks. You're going to be sadly disappointed, everybody, my friends. That doesn't happen. So set yourself mini milestones. Achievable things that you can do in that short time frame, because it reinforces that slight change in behavior. I would use as an analogy here, before I show you the last couple of slides here, is if you've ever been inspired to become healthier, to change the way of what you eat, you might say, do you know what, I'm going to be a real gym fanatic here. I'm going to go, or I'm going to get my training shoes on, I'm going to run around the block, and I'm going to do 5 miles. Now, it may work and it may not. Realistically, what I tend to find happens in any business change here is if you go for the big things, and you try and achieve that, you might do it for a couple of days, and then you won't be able to keep it up, and things will crash and burn, and that will give you a knockback. So set yourself things in very small incremental stages. Do that, do it consistently, tick the boxes. It's easier then to move on because you've reinforced this to actually be able to do that behavior. I want to share something with you on an individual scale here. This is a personal illustration of the grief cycle. It's not my personal one. This praise goes to, well, I'll tell you what, let me show you who it is, what it is, and then we're going to discuss at the end what that refers to. So I'm just going to turn myself off the screen for a moment.
Any sign of the duck?
Oh, it's just coming.
Oh, Uncle Ted comes in with his crate of brown ale and... and Mother says, oh, Ted, look who's here. And he says,
Okay, Polly.
Okay.
Got the sauces?
Got them.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, so sorry I don't kept you waiting. rifle for you, Mrs. Hall?
Now, everybody, that was. If you want to get the full sketch, by the way, I suggest that you go onto BBC, type in 40 Towers here, and that you'll see the full sketch and the context of that here. But that was a demonstration, that car sketch, of the Kubler-Ross grief cycle, believe it or not. There's that shock and denial that the car doesn't start in the first place. We've probably all been in that situation. There's the anger, obviously manifesting itself in terms of the beating with the tree. You've got the denial. You've got the depression, the bargaining, promising to take the car to the garage, and the acceptance and the action plan that goes with that. Obviously, the outcome has not been quite what we expected there. So I think hopefully that illustrates to some extent what we're referring to. So what do we do next? Well, I'm just going to leave you to consider that and reflect on that. So we talked about the grief cycle, and if hopefully it comes up reasonably okay, I'll just put my usual links here. Obviously, I could say that I love talking, love sharing information and content. If you like the content of the show, which hopefully you have, again, no embarrassment on my side. I'd love it if you could share it, distribute it, share the message. There's some links there in terms of another podcast coming out today, and free resources here. I've mentioned Joe's details at the end, by the way. Joe's got some great resources as well, and I'm a big believer in sharing information and tapping into networks there as well. And Joe is going to be introduced to us, you and the audience later on. But again, I would recommend have a look at her site, look at that reference. She's got some more information tools that you can tap into. So all I would say is, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for lending me your ears on this Saturday. Have a great time, and I look forward to speaking to all you guys next Saturday at 10:30. Take care, everyone. And as they say in the rock and roll world, love and peace.